On the 8th of December 2024, Bashar al-Assad was sitting alone on a couch, his eyes locked on the television as breaking news flooded the screen. Reporters spoke rapidly, city after city was falling, opposition forces were advancing, crowds were celebrating in the streets. The collapse of his control was being announced by the very media he once ruled. His face showed no panic, because at that very moment, Bashar al-Assad had already escaped. When armed opposition forces and units of the Syrian National Army launched their sudden offensive, the balance of power in Syria shifted in a matter of days. The advance toward Aleppo came faster than anyone expected, even Bashar al-Assad himself. Although he had always feared this moment would come, the speed of the collapse shocked him. His army was exhausted, disorganized, and unprepared for a large-scale counteroffensive. One strategic position after another fell, and with every loss, the walls around his rule began to close in. On the very night the fighting reignited, Assad quietly left Syria and flew to Russia. His goal was simple: secure urgent air support and slow the opposition's advance before it was too late. For 3 tense days, he remained in Moscow, meeting Russian officials and trying to persuade them to intervene. When he returned, the situation had only worsened. By November 30, opposition forces had seized Aleppo and were moving rapidly toward Hama. Assad now understood that the scenario he had feared for years was unfolding right before his eyes. Inside his palace in Damascus, the pressure became unbearable. According to sources close to the presidential circle, Assad spent long hours alone, replaying every possible outcome in his mind. The idea of losing power once distant now felt inevitable. But he had always prepared for this moment, in secret. As opposition forces closed in on Homs and reached the outskirts of the capital, Assad summoned senior military and security officials to the Ministry of Defense, December 8. Around 30 officers gathered in the meeting room. When they entered, they found Assad standing at the far end of the table with his back turned. For half a minute, he did not move. When he finally spoke, his tone was calm, but guarded. He told them Russian support was on the way. He ordered them to hold their positions. He warned them not to lose morale. No one challenged him. One officer tried to speak, but a sharp glance from Assad shut him down instantly. Moments later, he dismissed everyone. Some of those men still believed him. Others knew the truth. No help was coming. Behind closed doors, a message from Moscow had already reached him. Russia's main focus was no longer Syria. Ukraine had become the priority. That same morning, officials inside the presidential palace prepared for a national address. Equipment was set up, scripts drafted. The speech was announced, then suddenly postponed. Behind the scenes, Assad had already made his decision. That evening, Assad informed the director of the presidential office that he was heading home, but he never intended to return to his residence. Instead, he began the final phase of his escape. He explored 3 destinations for refuge: Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Russia. Iran refused to receive him. The UAE declined, fearing Western sanctions. Only Russia remained his final option. Publicly, Assad later claimed he stayed in Damascus until December 8 and only traveled to Latakia to coordinate operations with Russia. He said the evacuation order came suddenly from Moscow. But evidence told a different story. For years, Assad had quietly transferred massive sums of money out of Syria. Between 2018 and 2019 alone, nearly $250 million in cash was flown to Moscow in at least 21 separate trips. His family's total fortune is estimated at $2 billion, scattered across offshore accounts, shell companies, and luxury properties. In Moscow's elite districts, he owned 18 luxury apartments, carefully purchased as part of a long-term escape strategy. By December 8, the plan was no longer theoretical. he had only hours left. After leaving the Ministry of Defense, Assad entered his vehicle alone. No driver, no security convoy. He drove himself to the airport, hidden behind heavily tinted windows. During the drive, he made 2 critical phone calls, one to his private pilot, ordering immediate departure preparations, the other to his media advisor, Buthaina Shaban, asking her to come to the palace and prepare a public address. To regime loyalists, this signaled hope. They believed their president was about to speak, but it was a lie. When Shaban arrived at the palace, it was silent, empty. By 10 p.m., she tried calling Assad. No answer. That was the moment she realized she had been deceived. Half an hour later, Prime Minister Mohammad Jalali reached Assad by phone. He described the desperate situation across the country. Assad replied with only 3 words: "Tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow." Then he hung up. It was the last time anyone from his government ever spoke to him. At the airport, strong winds swept across the runway as Assad stepped out of his car. Only one pilot knew who he was transporting. Assad carried 2 suitcases filled with cash and a few personal belongings, all kept inside the cabin. The plane's transponder was switched off to avoid radar detection. Within minutes, the aircraft lifted off into the night sky. The first stop was Russia's Hmeimim Air Base in Latakia, where a second aircraft was already waiting. From there, he was flown directly to Moscow. His wife, Asma, and their 3 children were already there. She was undergoing cancer treatment. Their eldest son had recently completed his doctoral studies in Russia. As Assad fled, opposition forces entered the presidential palace in Damascus. Images soon flooded social media: unfinished meals on the stove, abandoned family photo albums, rooms left in haste. The departure had been rushed. Betrayal within his own family. Assad told no one of his escape. Not his advisors, not his closest allies, not even his brother Bashar al-Assad, commander of the 4th Armored Division. Mar was still on the front lines defending Damascus when he learned the truth. Furious and humiliated, he realized he had been sacrificed for his brother's survival. Soon after, he fled by helicopter to Iraq, then onward to Russia. Assad's cousins, Ahab and Ayad Makhlouf, were left behind in Damascus as the city fell. Their attempt to escape toward Lebanon ended in an ambush by opposition fighters. Reports say Ehab was killed and Iyad injured, though official confirmation remains unclear. This is how the final 24 hours of Bashar al-Assad's rule came to an end. He escaped alone. He abandoned those who defended him. He deceived even his own family. The officials left behind were outraged. They felt betrayed, sacrificed, discarded. For years, Assad's actions drove millions of Syrians into exile. And in the end, the man who once had absolute power became a refugee, just like the people he used to rule. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our latest videos. We dive deep into history, secrets, and events that shaped the world. And there's so much more coming. If you're curious about how the CIA finally tracked down Osama bin Laden after 9/11, I really suggest you check out this next video. It's full of incredible details you won't want to miss.